So what is the place of a woman inside the church? Can they be in ministry or not? Do they teach and preach, or should they be quiet and subservient to the male leaders inside the church? Now, this is a super hot topic in our culture today, and so what I want to do in this video is let you know some of the primary views and see what you guys think, because I have a feeling when we really get down to it, we may believe something different than we think we do. So on the far right side of the spectrum, we have what's called Christian Patriarchy. That is Christians who believe that because men were created first, God made us inherently superior to women, and women are, they take helpmate as almost like a servant or an assistant. And so we should lead in all things, inside the house, inside culture, inside church. Women should listen and obey. They have value, but it's very different than the value of men. And on the far opposite side of that, we have what's called Christian feminism. And now you may notice some similarities between these views. What this view says is God made mankind and then realized it wasn't good, and so he made women, which are inherently better. They have higher worth, higher value, and so they can do everything a man can, but better. And so their worth and their value is inherently higher, and guys should just recognize that women are the superior species, so to say. Now, outside of those two views, those are the very, very polar opposites, and some of those things that I said are a little humorous, but it does kind of generalize the core beliefs of Christian patriarchy and Christian feminism. I would say those are radical views. Most people in their daily lives don't hold those views at all. They hold a view that's either complementarian or egalitarian. Now, those are big words and they're very churchy words, but complementarianism means that men and women are created with equal value but separate purposes. God designed us different. He gave us equal value, but he made us good at different things. And therefore, we should play to those strengths and weaknesses that God gave us to fulfill the value that is equal that he gave us. And so inside Christian complementarianism, what you'll find is men and women both can serve in the church, but generally speaking, they believe that men were meant to lead the church and women were meant to do different roles inside. They can still serve. They can still even lead in various capacities, but they're generally more of a caretaker role. They're more of a supportive, empathetic role than what a man would normally have. And you see that with elders and the lead pastor and so on and so forth, all the way down to some what we call hard complementarians that would say women can't be pastors at all, but directors of children's programs, things like that. Then you have egalitarianism, which means that men and women have equal value, and they also have somewhat interchangeable roles, that God made men and women good at certain things, but that can also be based on the individual. And so inside egalitarianism, you find people who say, yes, women can be speakers and pastors, lead pastors, elders, but also so can men. They're not different values. God created each person, not each sex, each person with unique values and strengths that they should ultimately play to, and those roles are very interchangeable. Now, outside of this, I want to take a moment and just summarize and then propose a hypothesis for you guys. Because inside complementarianism and egalitarianism, those are really the only two that I consider valid views, right? Inside those, you have Bible verses that are very complementary to each one of them. For complementarianism, you have different parts in Timothy where Paul is telling that he doesn't allow women to teach in church, that they should learn in subservience and that they have other values, right? You do have other things where it talks about the qualification of the elder as a husband of but one wife. And so there are Bible verses and interpretations of those verses that really lead into that, not to mention some of the Old Testament hierarchies that were in the Mosaic Law and the different things like that, that kind of lead to a complementarian view. Equal value, we're all God's kids, but different purposes inside that. And then on the other side, in the egalitarian, you have verses like in Genesis where it says it's not good for men to be alone. And then you have ladies in the New Testament mentioned as deaconesses. The root word in many places for the deaconess or deacon is interchangeable with pastor and elder. And so there's a very valid argument on both ends that the Bible can speak to those realities. And here's my hypothesis, and I want to know what you guys think about this. What if it's not either or, but both and? Hear me out. What if there are certain scenarios, culturally speaking, that women should learn quietly? And inside that, we have strong historical data that talks to the idea of a very big problem that particular church that Paul was addressing with Timothy was having some massive issues with the female population for various reasons that we won't get into on this video. What if that's not bad in that scenario? And what if the other way is not bad either, where there are deaconesses, there are women that led and taught and mentored different Christian leaders, Apollos and Timothy, two of the most upcoming leaders in the New Testament, right? These people that did great things. What if it's not one way or the other, but both and? What if our circumstance determines what our calling is in this way? When Jesus came, he says that he didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Now, hear me out. Fulfilling it means to bring it to completion, to expand it to its full value or its full purpose. And so, what if it's not just the letter of the law that he's trying to teach us, but the morals and the implications and the lifestyle, God's heart, if you will, behind the law? And so what if there are people who are disrupting and being bad influences, they should learn in subservience? What if there are times where women are better suited for roles than men and vice versa? What if God cared a little bit less about the squabbles that we have in our personal preferences and more about his mission being accomplished and the calling on our lives? Now, I know by saying this, a lot of you guys are going to think on both sides, well, he's not picking either side. And this is something more as a question that I'm posing to you guys, because I wonder if we're so worried about the position of women in church, are we that worried about the state of our neighbor's soul? Are we that worried about the state of our country and the morality of our culture? Or are we trying to do something just to divide, just because we're angry, just because we want our preferences to be known as the right ones? I heard a pastor one time say, many Christians are so worried about being right that they're never going to make a difference. And perhaps he's not incorrect on that. Tell me your thoughts.